What happens when a beloved prince walks onto one of television's most respected stages and completely destroys his reputation in front of millions? It only took 37 seconds for Prince Harry to go from charming royal to the most entitled guest in talk show history. But before we dive into this shocking moment, make sure you hit that subscribe button right now, because we're pulling back the curtain on royalty's dark side. We're exposing entitled celebrities and their shocking behavior the cameras never showed you. We've got the raw footage they don't want you to see, and you won't want to miss a single reveal. Drop a comment below and let us know your thoughts on this outrageous behavior, because what you're about to witness will leave you absolutely stunned. Graham Norton's show has always been the gold standard of late-night television. For years, he's welcomed everyone from Hollywood, A-listers to music legends, always keeping things light, fun, and respectful. His warm Irish charm has made even the most nervous celebrities feel at home on his famous red couch. But nothing, and I mean nothing, could have prepared him for what was about to unfold when Prince Harry walked through those studio doors. The audience was buzzing with excitement. The cameras were rolling. Graham Norton, ever the professional, stood up with his signature smile to welcome his special guest. You could feel the energy in the room. This was supposed to be a friendly chat, a chance for Harry to connect with everyday people and show his down-to-earth side. But from the very first moment Harry sat down, something felt different. Something felt off. Graham Norton started with a simple, warm greeting. "Harry, welcome to the show. It's wonderful to have you here. How are you doing tonight?" Harry barely looked at him. He glanced around the studio like he was inspecting it, like he was judging every single detail. Then he finally responded, his voice cold and flat. "I'm fine. Though I must say, I expected something a bit more grand." This is the famous Graham Norton show everyone talks about? The audience went silent. You could hear people shifting uncomfortably in their seats. Graham Norton, being the professional he is, laughed it off gracefully. "Well, we like to keep things cozy here. It's all about the conversation, not the fancy decorations. Speaking of which, I was hoping we could talk about your recent charity work. I know you've been involved in some truly amazing causes." But Harry wasn't interested in talking about charity. He wasn't interested in anything Graham wanted to discuss. Instead, he cut Graham off mid-sentence. "Actually, Graham, I'd rather talk about something more important. Do you know how exhausting it is being me, being in the public eye constantly? I don't think people like you could ever understand. People like you." Those three words hung in the air like poison. Graham Norton's smile faltered for just a second, but he recovered quickly. "Well, Harry, I've been in television for quite a long time myself. I think many people in this room understand what it's like to have public attention." Harry laughed, but it wasn't a friendly laugh. It was mocking. It was cruel. "Please, Graham, you're a talk show host. I'm royalty. There's a difference. You chose this life. I was born into mine. You get to go home and be nobody. I'm a prince every single second of every single day." The audience gasped. Some people looked at each other in disbelief. Graham Norton's face remained calm, but you could see the hurt flash across his eyes. He spent decades building his career, decades making people laugh and feel welcome. And here was this guest, this prince, reducing everything he'd worked for to nothing. But Graham Norton is a consummate professional. He took a deep breath and tried to steer the conversation back on track. "I think many people face their own unique challenges, Harry. But let's talk about the positive work you're doing. Your foundation has helped so many young people around the world." Harry waved his hand dismissively, like he was swatting away a fly. "The foundation. Yes, it's fine. But honestly, Graham, I'm tired of being asked about charity work like it's the only thing I'm capable of discussing. I have thoughts. I have opinions. Important opinions that actually matter." Graham Norton nodded slowly, still trying to maintain his composure. "Of course you do. What would you like to share with us tonight?" And this is where things went from uncomfortable to absolutely explosive. Harry leaned back on the couch, spreading his arms wide like he owned the entire studio. "I think talk shows like this are part of the problem, actually. You bring people on, you ask them silly questions, you make everything into a joke. But some of us are dealing with real issues, serious matters, and we're expected to sit here and play along with your little games." The audience was stunned into complete silence. Graham Norton's other guests, who were sitting on the same couch, looked absolutely mortified. Nobody knew where to look. Nobody knew what to say. Graham Norton, to his absolute credit, remained calm. His voice was steady, professional, but you could hear the edge in it now. "Harry, this show has always been a place where people can relax and have genuine conversations. If you're not comfortable being here, we can certainly arrange something else." But Harry wasn't done, not even close. "Comfortable? I'm perfectly comfortable, Graham. I'm just being honest. Something you television people seem afraid of. Everyone wants to pretend everything is wonderful all the time. But the truth is, shows like yours are superficial. They're meaningless entertainment for people who have nothing better to do with their evenings." That was it. That was the line. Graham Norton had given Harry chance after chance to correct course, to apologize, to show even a tiny bit of respect. But Harry had crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. He'd insulted Graham. He'd insulted the show. And worst of all, he'd insulted the audience. The regular, hard-working people who loved Graham's show and looked forward to it every week. Graham Norton stood up. The smile was gone now. His expression was serious, dignified, but firm. "Harry, I've welcomed thousands of guests onto this show over the years. I've had conversations with people from all walks of life. Some are famous, some are not. Some are royalty, some are regular folks. But every single one of them has shown basic respect and courtesy. Not just to me, but to our audience and our crew." Harry rolled his eyes. Actually rolled his eyes. "Oh, here we go. The lecture." Graham Norton continued, his voice growing stronger. "You came here as a guest. Nobody forced you to be here. But if you can't treat people with basic human decency, if you think being born into a certain family gives you the right to talk down to others, then I'm afraid this isn't the right place for you." The audience started to clap. Slowly at first, then louder and louder. They were supporting Graham. They were standing with him against this entitled behavior. Harry looked genuinely shocked, like he couldn't believe people weren't on his side. You're actually going to make this into a thing?" "I'm speaking my truth, Graham. I'm being authentic." Graham Norton shook his head. "Being authentic doesn't mean being cruel, Harry. It doesn't mean dismissing other people's work or feelings. You've spent the last several minutes insulting me, insulting this show, and insulting everyone who works incredibly hard to make it happen. That's not authenticity. That's just being rude." Harry stood up now too, his face flushed red. "I don't have to sit here and listen to this. Do you know who I am?" And there it was, the 4 words that reveal everything about a person's character. Do you know who I am? The calling card of the entitled, the battle cry of someone who thinks their title matters more than their behavior. Graham Norton's response was perfect. Absolutely perfect. "Yes, Harry, I know exactly who you are. You're someone who forgot that respect goes both ways. You're someone who thinks a title excuses bad manners. And right now, you're someone who needs to leave my show." The audience erupted. People were on their feet, applauding Graham Norton's strength and dignity. The other guests on the couch looked relieved. The crew members, who had been standing awkwardly behind the cameras, were nodding in agreement. Harry looked around the studio, finally realizing he'd gone too far. But instead of apologizing, instead of showing even a shred of humility, he doubled down. "This is ridiculous. You're all ridiculous. This show is a joke anyway. I should never have agreed to come here." Graham Norton gestured toward the exit. "Then allow me to make this easy for you. The door is right there." Harry grabbed his jacket and started walking toward the exit, but he couldn't resist one final jab. He turned back to face Graham and the audience. "You people wouldn't understand real pressure, real responsibility. You live your small lives and you judge people like me, but you have no idea what it's actually like." Graham Norton's response was quiet but devastating. "You're right, Harry. Most of us weren't born into palaces. We had to work for everything we have. We had to earn people's respect instead of expecting it as a birthright. And you know what? I think that's made us better people." The audience went absolutely wild. The applause was deafening. People were cheering. This wasn't just about defending a talk show host anymore. This was about standing up against entitlement. This was about showing that no title, no amount of wealth or status gives anyone the right to treat others poorly. Harry's face went through about 5 different emotions: shock, anger, embarrassment, defiance, and finally, something that might have been regret, though it was hard to tell. Without another word, he turned and walked out of the studio. The moment the door closed behind him, Graham Norton turned back to the audience and his remaining guests. He took a deep breath, smoothed down his jacket, and sat back down. "Well," he said with a slight smile, "that was unexpected. Shall we continue with our evening?" The audience laughed and applauded again. The other guests looked relieved and impressed. One of them leaned over to Graham and said, "That was incredible. The way you handled that was absolutely incredible." Graham Norton simply shrugged. "I've been doing this a long time. You learn that kindness matters, respect matters. And sometimes you have to stand up for those values, even when it's uncomfortable." For the rest of the show, the energy was different. It was like everyone in that studio had witnessed something important, not just a celebrity meltdown, but a real moment of principle. A moment where someone in power chose dignity over drama, chose respect over ratings. Let's break down exactly what made this situation so shocking. First, there's the sheer audacity of Harry's behavior. He walked into someone else's space, someone else's show, and immediately started criticizing and belittling everything about it. That takes a special kind of entitlement, the kind that comes from never being told no, from always having people agree with you, from believing your opinion is more valuable than everyone else's. Second, there's the way he dismissed Graham Norton's career and achievements. Graham has spent decades perfecting his craft. He's interviewed thousands of people. He's won awards. He's beloved by millions. But Harry reduced all of that to nothing because, in his mind, being born royal automatically makes him more important. That's not just rude, that's fundamentally wrong. Third, and perhaps most damning, is the way Harry insulted the audience. These are real people. People who work hard all week and look forward to relaxing with a fun talk show. People who admire Graham and trust him. And Harry called them meaningless, called their entertainment superficial, suggested they had nothing better to do with their lives. That's not just arrogance, that's cruelty. But here's what makes Graham Norton the hero of this story. He could have escalated things. He could have shouted back. He could have made it into a huge dramatic confrontation, but he didn't. He remained calm, dignified, and firm. He set boundaries. He stood up for himself and his team without lowering himself to Harry's level. That takes real strength, real class. Think about the position Graham was in. This is a prince, a member of one of the most famous families in the world. Kicking him off the show could have had serious consequences. There could have been backlash. There could have been complaints. But Graham chose to do the right thing anyway. He chose to protect the integrity of his show and the dignity of his audience over the potential fame or controversy of keeping Harry there. And the audience recognized that immediately. That's why they applauded. That's why they cheered. They saw someone in a position of power make a principled decision. They saw someone refuse to be bullied or disrespected, even by royalty. Now let's talk about what Harry's behavior reveals. When someone shows you who they are, believe them. Harry showed everyone in that studio and everyone watching that he believes he's above normal rules of courtesy and respect. He showed that he thinks his title makes him special. Not his actions, not his character, but simply the family he was born into. This is the opposite of what royalty should represent. The best members of royal families understand that their position comes with responsibility. They understand that they're servants of the public, not masters over them. They understand that respect must be earned through actions, not demanded through titles. Harry's comment about being tired of discussing his charity work is particularly revealing. Charity work, helping others, making a positive difference in the world. These should be things someone is proud to discuss, things they're passionate about. But Harry saw it as a burden, as something boring that people kept asking him about. That tells you everything about his priorities. And then there's the classic "do you know who I am" moment. This phrase has become a punchline because it's so universally recognized as the mark of an entitled person. It's what people say when they realize their behavior has consequences and they're desperately trying to avoid those consequences by invoking their status. But here's the thing about the real world. Most people don't care about titles when it comes to basic respect. A prince who acts like a jerk is still a jerk. A royal who treats people poorly is still treating people poorly. The title doesn't erase the behavior. If anything, it makes the behavior worse because people in positions of privilege should know better. They should set the example. Graham Norton understood this perfectly. His response to "do you know who I am" was brilliant because it cut right to the heart of the issue. Yes, I know who you are. And that's exactly why this behavior is so disappointing, because you should be better than this. Let's also talk about what happened with the other guests on the couch. Imagine being them. You're excited to be on Graham Norton's show. You've prepared your stories, you're ready to have fun, and then this happens. One of your fellow guests starts attacking the host and ruining the entire atmosphere. They looked mortified because they were. They were embarrassed to be associated with that behavior. But they also saw something powerful. They saw Graham Norton stand up for himself and for them. Because make no doubt about it, when Harry insulted the show, he was insulting everyone involved with it. The guests, the crew, the audience, everyone. And Graham defended all of them. The crew members, the people behind the cameras who work incredibly hard to make the show happen, they rarely get recognition. But Harry insulted them too when he dismissed the show as meaningless. These are talented professionals who do their jobs with skill and dedication. And Graham stood up for them. That's leadership. Throughout this entire confrontation, Graham gave Harry multiple opportunities to correct his behavior, multiple chances to apologize or change direction. He tried to redirect the conversation to positive topics. He tried to be understanding about the pressures of public life. He was patient and professional right up until it became clear that Harry had no intention of showing respect. That's important because it shows Graham wasn't looking for a fight. He wasn't trying to create drama. He was genuinely trying to have a good show with an interesting guest. But when someone repeatedly crosses lines and refuses to show basic courtesy, eventually you have to set a boundary, and that's exactly what Graham did. The moment when Graham said respect goes both ways is crucial because that's the core issue here. Harry expected to be treated with respect because of his title, but he wasn't willing to give that same respect to others. He wanted deference and courtesy while offering none in return. That's not how human relationships work. That's not how society works. Respect is a two-way street, whether you're a prince or a plumber. Harry's final outburst as he was leaving, claiming that regular people couldn't understand his pressure and responsibility, was particularly tone-deaf, because everyone has pressures. Everyone has responsibilities. The single parent working 2 jobs to support their kids has pressure. The nurse working double shifts at a hospital has responsibility. The teacher shaping young minds has important work to do. Different people face different challenges, but that doesn't make some people's struggles more valid than others. And it certainly doesn't give anyone the right to dismiss other people's lives as small or meaningless. That's not just arrogant, it's cruel. Graham's final response was perfect because it highlighted exactly this point. Most people have to work for what they have. They have to earn respect through their actions. They don't get it automatically because of their birth, and that actually makes them appreciate it more. It makes them better people. This entire situation is a masterclass in how to handle entitled behavior. Graham Norton showed us that you can be calm without being weak. You can be polite without being a pushover. You can give someone chances to improve their behavior without tolerating disrespect. And when someone crosses too many lines, you can firmly ask them to leave while maintaining your own dignity. The audience's reaction throughout this whole thing was telling. They were initially excited to see Harry. They wanted to like him. They wanted to hear what he had to say. But as his behavior became increasingly rude and entitled, they turned against him, not because they were looking to gang up on someone, but because they recognized bad behavior when they saw it. And when Graham stood up to that behavior, they supported him enthusiastically. Because people recognize authenticity. They recognize integrity. They know the difference between someone standing up for what's right and someone just causing drama for attention. This moment will be remembered not because of Harry's tantrum, but because of Graham Norton's grace under pressure. It will be remembered as an example of how to handle difficult people with class and dignity, how to set boundaries without losing your temper, how to stand up for your values without compromising your character. Think about all the times you've seen entitled behavior in your own life. The customer who screams at a retail worker over something minor. The person who cuts in line because they think their time is more valuable. The individual who expects special treatment just because of their job title or bank account. We've all seen it. And it's always uncomfortable. It's always wrong. But how often do we see someone actually call it out? How often do we see someone in authority say, no, this behavior is not acceptable? Not often enough. Usually people try to smooth things over, to avoid confrontation, to just get through the situation. And that's understandable. Confrontation is uncomfortable. But sometimes confrontation is necessary. Sometimes you have to draw a line and say, this far and no further. That's what Graham Norton did. And in doing so, he showed everyone watching that it's okay to stand up for yourself. It's okay to demand respect. It's okay to remove someone from your space if they're being toxic. The lesson here isn't just about celebrity behavior or talk shows. It's about human interaction in general. It's about the fact that we all deserve to be treated with basic courtesy and respect, regardless of our titles or positions. And when someone refuses to offer that basic courtesy, there should be consequences. Harry learned that lesson the hard way, He walked into that studio thinking his title would protect him, thinking he could say whatever he wanted without repercussions. But he learned that respect matters more than royalty, character matters more than crowns, and behavior has consequences, even for princes. For Graham Norton, this was a defining moment in his career, not because of the drama, but because of the principle. He showed that after decades in the industry, he's still the same person who values respect, kindness, and dignity above all else. He showed that success hasn't changed his core values. And he showed that sometimes, being a good host means knowing when to show a bad guest the door. The real winners in this situation were the audience members who got to witness something genuine. In a world of carefully scripted interactions and pre-approved talking points, they saw a real moment. They saw someone stand up for what's right. They saw integrity in action, and they saw that entitled behavior, no matter who it comes from, is never acceptable. So what can we learn from this incredible moment? We learn that titles don't excuse bad manners. We learn that respect is earned, not owed. We learn that kindness and firmness can coexist. We learn that standing up for yourself doesn't require aggression or cruelty. And we learn that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is simply say, "This is not acceptable. Please leave." Graham Norton handled an impossible situation with grace, dignity, and strength. He didn't lose his temper. He didn't resort to insults. He didn't stoop to Harry's level. He simply set a boundary and enforced it. That's real power. That's real class. That's the mark of someone who truly deserves respect. And Harry? Well, Harry learned that being born into privilege doesn't entitle you to treat others poorly. He learned that people will only tolerate disrespect for so long before they push back. And he learned that sometimes the person you underestimate is the person who teaches you the most important lesson. This moment will be talked about for years to come. Not because it was the most dramatic celebrity meltdown ever, not because it was the biggest scandal in television history, but because it was a perfect example of principle over prestige, of character over celebrity, of doing what's right even when it's hard. Graham Norton stood up for himself, for his team, and for every person who's ever been made to feel small by someone who thinks they're important. And in doing that, he showed us all what real importance looks like. It's not about titles or bloodlines or castles. It's about how you treat people. It's about integrity. It's about respect. That's the story of the night Prince Harry got kicked off Graham Norton's show. It's a story about entitlement meeting its match, about arrogance facing accountability, and about one man's refusal to tolerate behavior that goes against everything decent people believe in. So next time you see entitled behavior, remember this moment. Remember that it's okay to stand up. It's okay to set boundaries. And it's okay to demand the respect you deserve. Because if Graham Norton can do it to a prince, you can do it too.